Welcome back. You are listening to Nate the Hate on YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and give the video a like, and make sure to leave a comment in the comment section below to let us know your thoughts on the episode. And with that, I'd like to welcome in my co-host for this episode, as we have a special guest. We have Randall Thor joining us today to talk Xbox in 2025. Welcome, Rand.
What's up, Nate? It's good to be back. It's been a while, but I noticed no MVG. What's going on?
No MVG for this episode. We had some scheduling conflicts to start 2025, but he will be back for our next episode when we will be talking Nintendo in 2025. But because we are talking Xbox and Microsoft, I figured you would be the perfect person to come on, as you are kind of the champion of Xbox and Microsoft, and you're also very critical of the company when it is time to be critical of them, but you also know when to praise them when they are doing well. And, you know, up to this point, Microsoft has definitely had a very challenging generation with the Xbox Series. But I hate to say it, because I know people say Xbox content creators say this every year. But it is looking like
don't say it.
2025 may just be one of their best years in a long time.
Oh, you did it now. Oh, man.
And, you know, I know everyone's going to say,
you jinxed
oh my God. I jinxed it.
Now because you said that Fable got delayed.
Oh, man, don't put that on me.
If you had just kept your mouth shut, it would have launched.
Everything's getting delayed out of 2025 now.
Yeah. The only game you're getting is Avowed and South of Midnight and the new Call of Duty. All because Nate said it was the year of Xbox.
But really, it sounds as though this could be the year of Xbox. They have a lot of fantastic releases coming from Xbox Game Studios, Bethesda, Activision. And I think there's going to be a few surprises as well. And, you know, first I have to get to this episode dedication. We have Sketchdog, whom this episode is dedicated to, who generously donated $100 to support the channel. If you'd like to support the channel, we have a Streamlabs link in the description below. Donate $100 or more. We will dedicate the episode to you. Donate any dollar amount. Ask a question. We'll answer it at the end of the episode. We also now have YouTube memberships active, where members get access to exclusive polls. And if we get 150 active members, we will do a once a month live stream for members only, where MVG and I will come up with a topic of conversation and be able to directly interact with our members. We will also do game giveaways and such. So consider that as an option if you'd like to support the channel. But for today's episode, we're going to start off with the Developer Direct, Microsoft's first communication with Xbox fans for 2025. And it's going to air on January 23rd. And they've given us a bit of a tease as to what is going to be at the Developer Direct. We're going to see South of Midnight, Doom, and Expedition 33, a real-time, or is it a turn-based RPG?
Yeah. Made a splash during the showcase last year.
Yes, everyone was very excited for it because it kind of looked like a JRPG from the PlayStation 2 generation. And it will be on Game Pass coming this spring. And, you know, Microsoft has given us that general outline of what to expect from the Developer Direct, but there's always a few surprises. So I want to talk about the Developer Direct first, when we think some of these games will release and what surprises that we may expect or suspect will be part of it. So let's start with South of Midnight. When do you think this game is going to launch?
I mean, they're pretty... We've seen the... documentary that was it was like a month ago, right? Where they had people from the studio talking about the game, showing off gameplay, and they're tweeting clips of the gameplay quite often. So I feel like the game could be ready sooner than later. So in my mind, you know, we know Avowed is February 18th or February 14th for early access. So in my mind, I've always kind of pegged South of Midnight for March or April. And we know from the vinyl leak that it was supposed to ship the soundtrack by the end of April. So, I mean, like April seems like a pretty good date for South of Midnight.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's what I would go for.
I'm in agreement with you. I think that game's going to come out in April. I know there's been some rumors and suggestion that maybe the game would be releasing in March, but some of those rumors had also suggested that the game would be shown at the Game Awards, and that did not happen. So even just getting a nice update and seeing the game in a more in-depth fashion at the Developer Direct, I think is very welcoming. But as you said, they have been showing a lot of gameplay. They've been doing the developer interviews and such via social media. And I think the game looks fantastic. I love the music. I love the stop motion animation that they have going on for the cutscenes. And just the general traversal and combat system that they have here. It's very reminiscent of games from the PlayStation 2 era, or even the more recently released Kena that was on PlayStation 5 and recently came to Xbox over the summer in 2024. It's just a very basic, simple game. And I think it's going to be very fun. The art style of the game is beautiful, and the visual just direction, I think, is really captivating. So I think that's going to be one of the early year Game Pass motivators for people, especially as it would very closely follow Avowed in February. Now, I do want to go to Doom Dark Ages, as this game made a huge splash at the June showcase when it was shown off. And a lot of people were kind of taken aback by how quick and visually pleasing Dark Ages was, and even just the general tone of the game, where you have a shield and a mace and just the sheer destruction and chaos you have. You're flying a dragon. The scale of the game is definitely far more vast compared to Doom Eternal or even Doom 2016. So the Dark Ages is definitely going to be a significant release when it comes out this year. And that's been a hot topic among people. When will Doom Dark Ages come out? And I have this game landing in May. I think it's going to be kind of that tentpole release for the first half of the year for Microsoft. And it just creates that good momentum for Game Pass of from Avowed to South of Midnight to Doom. Just boom, boom, boom. 3 heavy hitters. When do you think Doom's going to come out?
Yeah, I mean, I had it pegged for May or June. May is, I think, a better release date for it, or release month. Because I was thinking back to Doom Eternal and Doom 2016, and I think they both, like, Doom Eternal launched in March, and I think Doom 2016 launched in May, if I'm not mistaken, because it was, if you remember, it killed Battleborn. Or no, it was Overwatch that killed Battleborn. My bad, but I want to say it was around that time, like March or May. So yeah, like I feel like, you know how Xbox and Phil Spencer and Matt Booty have talked about this idea of releasing a big game a quarter, and it's like most of the time they miss, even though there has been instances where it did hit, like 2023, and it looks like this year they're gonna hit it, and they're gonna hit it pretty hard with Avowed in the first quarter, and then South of Midnight and Doom in the second quarter, because Doom is going to be an absolutely massive game, like considering how big Eternal was. People love Doom. You know, I'm kind of disappointed that that's a prequel. You know, like,
yeah.
In that, I'm still super excited to play it, but I'm just like, I wasn't really that. When, like, the story ended in the Ancient Gods, I was like, oh, okay, the story's over. Maybe it can go do something else. And there were rumors that, member of a Quake reboot of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have, okay, it's a Doom Dark Ages, but it's a prequel set during the time in between the games or whatever. And I don't know, sometimes prequels just don't do it for me. So, but I mean, it's a great developer. I can't wait to play the game. And I guess, you know, since I'm not the Nintendo guy, but you are, I'd figure I'd ask you, like, we know this game's launching on PS5 day one.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine the Nintendo Switch 2 is about to get announced somewhat soon, considering all these other companies are showing it off. Is Doom the Dark Ages a game that you expect to launch as a launch, like not a launch game for the Switch 2, but day one on Switch 2, or do you think it would come to the platform later on?
I think it's going to be one of those games that comes to the Switch 2 later on. I haven't heard anything that has given me any definitive say that Doom Dark Ages is coming to Switch 2, but given that Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal did come to the platform, I think it's only natural to expect that Doom Dark Ages will find its way to the platform. But I would suspect maybe it's it's 6 months, 12 months after the release on Xbox and PlayStation 5. And given the way, how dev kits can be distributed, the time it would take to need to port, optimize and such, I think that timeline is well within reason. But I'd be very surprised if Doom Dark Ages didn't find its way to Switch 2. And we, as we know, Microsoft and its grand ambitions for multi-platform, which we will get into further later in the episode, I just feel as though that's definitely a title that will find its way to the Switch 2 at some point, just not in the immediate, as far as like the May release timing. So then we have Claire Obscura Expedition 33. We know the game right now is just targeting spring. It is a Game Pass release as well. With Avowed coming out in February and us having the expectation of South of Midnight in April and Doom in May, where would you slot this game in? Because for Microsoft to have this as a headliner for the Developer Direct, it clearly means that they do view this title of some importance. And I don't think they'd want it competing with those two games. So do you think this is maybe a March release, or maybe this is another May release? Because depending on how liberal you want to be with the definition of spring, I guess it could really fit anywhere from March all the way to June, technically.
Yeah, I mean, like, when you look at it like that, March would be the perfect time frame. Slots in between Avowed and South of Midnight. But then again, it's a third-party game, and we know games tend to... Xbox expects them to release, and then they end up getting delayed. Like, Replace was supposed to release last year and getting pushed to 2025. So you can never really control what the third parties do, but they are putting a lot of emphasis on this game. Like, it was one of the games shown last year at Showcase that really surprised people, and there's been a lot of interest in it. So the fact, I don't know, they must really be behind the game for it to be at the Direct. So if they give a release date, which maybe they will, maybe they won't, I'll go with like middle of March as a guess.
Yeah, if I had to guess, I think I would also go with March for this release. I could definitely see it maybe sometime in April, but it just comes down to how far along the game is, because all we've had communicated to us is spring. But for it to be in the Developer Direct, it definitely feels as though maybe it is closer to release than some would suspect.
Yeah, I definitely think it's coming in the first half of the year. So between February and end of June. So
I kind of think that might be the overall tone of the Developer Direct itself, is kind of first half of 2025 releases. And if Doom is May, as we have predicted, there's really nothing else that is officially announced for the Developer Direct that would be coming in the second half of the year. I think Doom is the only one you could possibly have entertained as a second half release, but we've had it pegged for May. So I do want to go into what else do you think could be present in the showcase? Because there's always an unannounced game or two that makes an appearance in these showcases that surprise people. A shadow drop like we had with Hi-Fi Rush. Last year we had Square Enix with Visions of Mana. Do you think we're going to see a repeat of that with maybe a Microsoft game or another third-party game?
I mean, it's certainly possible. I don't think they'll do the Dev Direct with just 3 games. So a fourth game, is something that I would imagine is going to be there. The question is, what is it? Right? Xbox has a lot of games they could choose from. I mean, some people would say that Avowed needs to be there because the game's launching very soon after the Direct. But if Avowed was there, I mean, it would be included in the press release probably. They wouldn't need to hide it, right? Towerborn's supposed to launch sometime on Xbox this year. It's early access on Steam, so it's like that's also a game that like you don't necessarily need to hide. So I don't know. You kind of look at the games like, well, what's big enough or could draw a lot of interest that you would not want to say anything about it? And it's like, okay, well, there are heavy rumors about an Oblivion remaster could show up, right? Or like one of the like Fable or Gears EDay, something like that. I mean, imagine how stoked people would be if like the 4th game or the 5th game or whatever it is Gears EDay, when nobody expects it to be 2025. It's there, kind of like last year with Indiana Jones. Outside of you sneaky, you put in your thought. I knew because I remember DMing you, be like, oh man, you sneaky guy, because you had it in your. Nobody thought Indiana Jones was going to be 2024.
True.
So could they replicate that with Gears EDay? Because a lot of people don't think that game's 2025. I mean, there hasn't been really much reporting on the game at all. So like, do they surprise people and be like, Gears is this year? Or do they go in a different direction and do another third party game? I don't know. I don't know what to expect. That's why there's a lot of choices here to choose from, and it's very difficult. I mean, to pick one, because I sort of feel like Fable's going to be the showcase game, like that gets its own direct after the showcase, like Starfield and Call of Duty. So I don't know. What do you think? What do you think would be like the fourth or fifth game, the secret game that they're not telling anybody?
I mean, you have had a lot of the rumors about Oblivion being at the developer direct. And I will say, I don't subscribe to that mentality. I just don't think Oblivion makes a lot of sense for the developer direct. It's not going to be a huge release. And I'm not trying to diminish the quality of the game in any way. I will say that at some point last year, one of the original plans or rumors that were going around was that Oblivion was going to be in the developer direct and it was going to be a shadow drop. But as the year went on, I began to hear a lot of different information around it. And I will say now that Oblivion will be coming out in 2025, and it's currently slated to release in the month of June. So it's another first half of the year release for Microsoft. And it just comes down to when are they going to reveal it or announce the game? And if it's not at the developer direct, I'm kind of thinking maybe they announce it in March, which would follow very close to when the game had originally released on the Xbox 360 in 2006. So
maybe they do like an anniversary teaser or anniversary retrospective that announces an Oblivion remaster. That makes sense.
Yeah, then you release it a couple of months later in June, and you get people hyped and interested for the game. Because I think if you threw it in this developer direct, even with just the games that we've said, South of Midnight and Doom, I think Doom Dark Ages kind of overshadows really anything else that could be in that presentation from a first party standpoint, unless you were bringing something much bigger like Gears EDay or something of that caliber. But otherwise, I think they really want to just keep this showcase contained and let Doom and South of Midnight and Expedition 33 be the headliners. Let them showcase what's coming to Game Pass in those first opening months, and let a release like Oblivion, again, a quality release, but by no means a headliner, just be announced a few months later, have its release in June, and go on its merry way. Now, third-party wise, I'm kind of expecting that we're going to have that interference screen appear again. And once again, it's going to be Square Enix. And the game that's going to be announced finally is going to be Final Fantasy 16.
That's something coming. Isn't that something you threw out there a while back?
Yeah, over a year ago.
Yeah, finally Square Enix making good on that Nate promise.
Like finally, Final Fantasy 16 will be announced for the platform, and I suspect it's going to be very similar to what we have with Death Stranding. I think it'll be a shadow drop.
That would be fun.
Available right now following the presentation. It's going to have both expansions, and hopefully they give it at somewhat of a discount so that you have incentive to buy the game either for the first time or maybe double or triple dip, depending on how you played it. But I think they're going to go one step beyond.
One step beyond. Okay, interesting. What could they? What are you saying? They're going to announce Foam Stars as well?
After what I say, you'll be wishing Foam Stars was Xbox bound. I think following the announcement of Final Fantasy 16, we will see Square Enix confirm that Final Fantasy 7 Remake and Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth will be coming to Xbox. Now, my speculation is that this announcement will take place at the developer direct. I want to make that part clear, but I can confirm that Final Fantasy 7 Remake and Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth will be coming to Xbox. Final Fantasy 7 Remake will be released in 2025. Rebirth will follow in 2026. These games will also be coming to Nintendo Switch 2.
Yeah, I mean, Square Enix has been out there very publicly talking about, hey, we can't do exclusives anymore, and that we want to put our games in everywhere. So I mean, it's sort of this sort of thing was kind of to be expected. I mean, I don't know about them announcing them during the developer direct, because that's kind of a big move, because if you look at like the franchises that Xbox fans have been asking for to come back to the platform, it's really the Final Fantasy games, Final Fantasy 16 and 7 remake and Rebirth. So if that's what you're doing, you're basically being like, yeah, we know, we've heard you, these are coming, and then here's a release date for Doom South of Midnight and stuff. I mean, that's a pretty damn solid dev direct. You're gonna make a lot of people happy, a lot of people angry too, because for some weird reason there are a lot of people out there that don't want to think about the idea of Final Fantasy not being PlayStation exclusive. It's a weird thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think people should just realize and accept that Final Fantasy 7 or Final Fantasy 7 as a franchise is just not going to be console exclusive anymore. And yeah, I think people would be very excited to finally hear the confirmation that Final Fantasy 7 Remake and Rebirth are coming to Xbox. Still with just Final Fantasy 7 Remake 2025, Rebirth in 2026. And, you know, it's been a thing, as you mentioned, Xbox fans have been asking for. This has been going on for years. You had rumors going back to 2022 that Final Fantasy 7 Remake was going to be announced at a June showcase, and then nothing happened. And I think if you pair it with the Final Fantasy 16 announcement, you just generate a lot of hype for a Final Fantasy brand on Xbox. Now, it's just going to come down to that question of, will Xbox fans show up when these games do release? I think that's where, with Final Fantasy 16, I think you kind of have to offer a preliminary discount for the first 2 weeks or so, similar to what you did with Death Stranding. Just discount it 20, 30% or something, so that you can have double dippers or triple dippers have incentive to do so. Because I played the game on PlayStation 5 to basically 100% completion. The only thing I didn't do is a run on Final Fantasy mode. And I would now have to ask myself, will I play this on Xbox? I'd probably consider it with the expansions if they discounted it to $30, maybe $40 as a ceiling. And I'm sure others would sit there and say it's going to come down to the price. Now, if you've never played Final Fantasy 16 for whatever reason and you'd like to play it on Xbox, by all means do so. It's a really good game. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Some epic boss battles, some really cool encounters. And I think overall, I think that would round out a very solid developer direct for Microsoft to start the year. You laid out a nice roadmap of first-party games, and you had a significant third-party announcement, not just with Expedition 33 coming to Game Pass and a release date, but also with Final Fantasy 16, ideally shadow dropping, and then confirmation of Final Fantasy 7 Remake and Rebirth coming to your platform. I think Xbox fans could walk away from that developer direct and say, hey, that was a quality showcase. I feel good about the year coming up, or at least the first 6 months of the year, because I have a lot of games to play. And that's all Microsoft really needs to communicate at this point, is that if you have a Game Pass subscription or you own an Xbox, there's going to be product for you to enjoy. And naturally, Doom is a multi-platform game, so PlayStation fans are going to be tuning in to find out more information about the game, as they should. And then you announce in a couple of more months that Oblivion is coming out in June, and you just keep the momentum going, especially as you're leading up to that June showcase to detail further what's coming out this year. And I want to go to that now. I want to talk about the first party output that Microsoft could have in 2025. And you brought up an interesting game earlier, Gears of War EDay.
Yeah. It's a game that is, when you look at Showcase last year, it's a game that nobody expected. Everybody was thinking about Gears 6, right? Probably, I don't know, unless you knew. But did you know it was going to be a prequel set in EDay, or did you?
I thought it was going to be a Gears of War 6. I thought it was going to be a sequel to 5, that they were going to finish the story. So when that trailer showed up and I saw the younger Dom and the young Marcus, at first I thought it was just like the visuals were so good that they just looked younger than they meant to. And then once they panned the camera
Yeah.
And you could see the locusts emerging from the ground. You had the spiders and Brumax and everything on. And it just came up EDay. And it hit me that it's a prequel. I was like, this is the best idea they could have done. Because you always heard the lore. You heard the backstory of how Marcus and Dom became legends. But you never got to experience what EDay was. We saw a bit of EDay in Gears of War 1's opening cinematic of the people at the cafe and the streets and everything is bursting through the ground. But now to experience what the game's lore has always suggested as just the bloodiest situation that humanity ever encountered, I can't wait to play this game, because Gears of War 1, to me, with the horror and the dark elements, was so radically different than what we got with Gears 3 or even Gears 4 and 5. I can't wait to go back to this. And even just the tone they set with the EDay trailer of kind of being, you're overpowered. You're not ready to take on the locusts. And they have these prototype and rough R&D versions of the Lancer and stuff in the trailer. I can't wait to see the direction they really take this game, but they have my interest. And it was a huge surprise to see at the June showcase.
What would be a bigger surprise is, I think, what you're getting at. And I know I just said that prequels really don't do it for me. However, I've been wanting to see EDay for a long time. So like, this prequel does interest me, right? But the big surprise I think a lot of people will have is very much like Indiana Jones last year, where nobody really had it pegged for 2024, and it released in December, right? Pretty close to 2025. But I think Gears EDay could release in 2025, and I think you believe the same.
I do subscribe to the idea that Gears of War EDay, or Gears EDay, whatever they actually title the game, will release in 2025. I think it's going to be kind of the title that kickstarts their holiday lineup. So you kind of put it in that late September, early October slot, and you just let it really generate huge momentum for your brand going into the holiday. And I think they need Gears EDay this year because it generated a lot of excitement.
Sure did. So what do you think? Their holiday lineup, when you're talking about that, we can probably, in your mind, it's what? Gears EDay, Outer Worlds 2, the new Call of Duty, and Fable? As
I think I might put the Outer Worlds 2 maybe in like in August, so a month ahead, maybe like August or September, like maybe a month ahead of Gears EDay. So I think I would do the Outer Worlds 2, Gears EDay, Call of Duty, Fable.
And then combine that with earlier in the year with South of Midnight, Avowed, and Doom with an Oblivion remaster.
With Oblivion in June. And I think you're going to laugh at me for saying this.
Oh, geez, here we go.
I think a Gears of War collection will also be released in the summer, kind of as a lead-in to Gears EDay.
Is Special Nick listening to this podcast? I hope so.
Come on, Nick. Listen to this. Make the tweet and say, I've heard similar.
Gears Trilogy. I mean, the collection has been a rumor for 3 years now. I think it first showed up in 2022. I do think it's a bit odd to release a collection in the same year releasing the next game. But what do I know? I
mean, I'll say last year after seeing Gears EDay, I was ready to let go of the collection and say, you know what, it's not going to happen, especially if Gears EDay comes out in 2025, because it felt as though if there were to be a collection, you'd have to release it in 2024. Give it a nice year gap between EDay's release. But I also kind of had in the back of my mind at the time, maybe EDay isn't a 2025 release. But then you had a report come from The Verge and Tom Warren saying that Gears of War EDay is targeting 2025. And when you look at the marketing history of Gears of War games, they do typically announce the game 1 year in advance of its release. So if they are doing that here, if they are copying that, it would mean Gears EDay is a 2025 release. And every part of me wants that to be the truth. And I just think it would be a good way to introduce, maybe new fans to the Gears of War franchise by giving you the Gears collection. This way you have some familiarity with Marcus and Dom. and you have some of that history of what EDay was. You understand why humanity is so fearful of the Locust, why they're in so much desperation, why they fear using weapons like the Hammer of Dawn, how weapons like the Lancer evolved and were prototyped and R&D to become these vicious weapons of war to chainsaw Locusts in half and everything. So you kind of give a little context to everything. And maybe that would generate excitement to go into the prequel, to have some of these questions that the first game presented, and you're finally going to get those answers versus giving you the prequel and say, ooh, what comes next? And giving you the collection, let's say in 2026 instead. So I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to will it into existence.
Okay.
That a Gears collection is going to release this summer.
But here's a question I have then, because if you're releasing a Gears collection and also Gears EDay, one of the big things about Gears is multiplayer. I really can't imagine a scenario where they release a Gears collection that has the multiplayer from all those games, which people adore, right? And you release Gears EDay later in the year that presumably will have its own multiplayer suite. It sort of seems like it's kind of why you talked about, last year they should have released it, because people would have been, okay, let's play the multiplayer for a year, then I can play the new one. But if you're releasing in the same year, you're just going to divide the user base between people who want to play the old Gears multiplayer and the people who want to play this. So, like, I guess two things come to mind. Is one being that Gears EDay doesn't have any multiplayer, or Gears Collection doesn't have any multiplayer?
See, in that scenario, I'd have to go with the latter. I think the Gears Collection would maybe omit multiplayer if they are to go this route. Because if you're familiar with the Gears trilogy's multiplayer, you know the first game's multiplayer is very different from the third game. And the second game introduced tripping, and smoke grenades could knock you down for 5 seconds. And that was removed. And in a lot of ways, Gears 2 multiplayer kind of ruined things. Gears 3 was kind of a step closer to what Gears 1 had introduced, though Gears 1 has its own share of problems where people hated the idea that you could be meleeed with the shotgun and then just blasted immediately with a shot. So I think merging those three would kind of prove to be difficult. Whereas if you just want to give us a collection of the campaign, so you are introduced to the main characters and the story beats, and then Gears EDay has the full-fledged multiplayer. Because even when we look at what they have shared about Gears EDay, and they kind of have highlighted that you're going to get a very rough prototype of the Gnasher. You're going to have a really run-down version of the Lancer because they haven't perfected the technology yet, because this is a time when they're at war. They don't have access to a lot of these resources to make the high-end weaponry that you had in Gears 1, 2, and 3. So I think when you're making the multiplayer, you have to focus on those type of weapons. You're not going to introduce weapons like the modern torque bow or the boom shot in Gears EDay multiplayer if it's not featured in the main game, even though those are staples of Gears multiplayer. So with Gears EDay, you can really create that multiplayer around the weapons that are highlighted and showcased in that campaign, and design the multiplayer around locations and such that are featured in the main game. Whereas with the Gears collection, I think the main thing to deliver there is really just the campaign. But I mean, this is all obviously just speculation of how they could approach this. But I think that would be the smarter avenue or way to approach it, is just give me the 3 campaigns of the Gears collection and then let Gears EDay have a rich multiplayer with maps and modes and such. That's where players can invest a lot of their time and just dive into multiplayer and play it for the next several years.
Yeah, but I mean, either way, like Gears EDay launching this year alongside all those other games.
Oh, it's huge.
That is a massive year. I mean,
yeah, when you pair Gears EDay with Fable, and maybe just within a 3-month window from each other.
Well, so I guess we need to talk about Fable. How I guess this also brings up the elephant in the room is Grand Theft Auto 6.
Yep.
Because sure, you can have all the plans in the world, right? Game development is also chaotic, and things could slip for whatever reason, right? It does seem like, at least in the beginning of the year, Avowed and Doom and South of Midnight and Oblivion are probably all like fine, all set to go. But then you end the second half of the year, and you got Outer Worlds 2, Fable, and Gears. Call of Duty is going to be there no matter what, because it always is. Is Xbox looking at it like, all right, we feel that GTA 6 is going to come out spring 2026, so let's make sure we get out these games now? Or because, like, if it's not, and if they surprise everybody with Grand Theft Auto launching this fall, I would imagine that Xbox is going to look at some of those games and being like, yeah, we need to delay some of this stuff, because nobody's going to care about any. I know it's kind of rough to say nobody's going to care about Gears EDay, but when you're going up against the 800-pound gorilla of GTA 6, no game is safe.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine every publisher out there is looking and waiting for Rockstar to really just come out and say, when is Grand Theft Auto 6 releasing? And there's definitely been some rumor and speculation that maybe Grand Theft Auto 6 will be delayed into early 2026. And I think that's kind of that case of, when we go back to the developer direct, maybe that's why Microsoft will focus just on H1, the first half of 2025, because they don't want to commit to a game in the second half of 2025 without knowing where GTA 6 will land. Now, come June, ideally, Rockstar has communicated at least some sort of semblance of a plan of when Grand Theft Auto 6 will be released. And Microsoft could also view it as, hey, Grand Theft Auto 6, let's say it comes out in October. If we have Gears in September, if we have Fable in December, we're not really directly competing with the game.
Sure.
And
yeah,
as long as we have several weeks of buffer between the release, we should be okay. Maybe you position Call of Duty as the title that's closer to Grand Theft Auto, because Call of Duty is not going to be overshadowed. It's not going to be trampled by Grand Theft Auto. Call of Duty can stand its ground. And it might just be, hey, we want to create a nice cadence of release for Game Pass and our brand. So even if Grand Theft Auto 6 is here, we're still going to release our heavy hitters. We don't want to do a strategic delay, because they did it in 2024, where they delayed Avowed out of November, put it into February, because they were looking at some of the releases that began to populate the end of October and November. You had Dragon Age Veilguard. You were supposed to have Assassin's Creed Shadows before it was delayed. Stalker 2 was delayed into November. So they're looking at that saying, okay, well, we have Stalker 2 coming to Game Pass in November. We had a marketing deal with Dragon Age Veilguard. I believe they also have the marketing of Assassin's Creed Shadows. So what purpose would it have been to have Avowed slotted in really between three games that are going to be much bigger than what you had with Avowed? And then you have to factor in Call of Duty was also very close there as well in October. So just they made a decision. Let's strategically delay Avowed to early 2025 to give it some room to breathe. Could they make that decision with GTA 6 when that finally gets a release date with one of these games? Maybe, but maybe they just don't care anymore. They're just going to release what they have, and they say these games are ready. We're bringing them to market.
Well, it's interesting because most people don't believe Gears EDay is 2025. And here, me and you both being like, we think there's a good chance it is, right? And then a lot of people think, oh, there's no way Fable's launching this year, right? Because just a lot of the times Xbox will delay stuff. Like you go back to 2020, they delayed Halo Infinite and Psychonauts. You go back to 2022, they delayed Starfield and Redfall. You just mentioned, you go to 2024, they delayed Avowed, right? So is this the year that actually nothing gets delayed from them and everything announced hits? Because like right now, the only things announced for 2025 are South of Midnight, Doom, Avowed, Towerborn, and Outer Worlds 2 and Fable, correct? Like those are the ones that are actually like had the trailers and had the dates 2025 on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are the ones that Microsoft came out, slapped 2025 on. And I think Microsoft put 2025 on those games because they are confident that the games will release this year and that they basically it's a certainty. They know they will hit.
And you're confident
that time frame.
Even Fable, like you're confident Fable, whether Fable releases in December like Indiana Jones or in November,
right.
Like you think it's coming this year, no matter. Well, unless like Grand Theft Auto pops in and says hi, I guess.
Yeah, unless like Grand Theft Auto comes in and says, hey, I'm releasing December 5th, and Microsoft had dated Fable as December 4th, they might say, well, let's push you to February because you're Fable, and that's Grand Theft Auto 6, and Fable just can't stand up against you. Even though we show you fighting giants in the trailer, you cannot fight the actual giant when it comes to real life. So maybe in that situation, Fable does get a bump. But I think Fable makes it by December. I think it gets the Indiana Jones slot. And it's kind of unfortunate to get the Indiana Jones slot because if you are a fantastic game, you're not going to be in the Game of the Year conversation for the Game Awards, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But
I almost would rather want to have them delay it at that point. Like if the game's that good and it's not going to get any recognition, and maybe even you look at Indiana Jones and how good it was, I feel like it didn't get the recognition nor even like the sales it should have.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if releasing in December is a barrier against, there's a reason why most companies don't release any games in December.
Yeah, December has kind of been viewed as that black hole when it comes to sales of certain games because it's just not there. Any game that comes out after Black Friday tends to struggle a bit when it comes to sales because when it comes to holiday shopping, when are you doing most of it? You're doing it before Black Friday. So if you're buying video games for your children, a niece, nephew, or whatever, you tend to do it around that Black Friday window. When you're coming into the opening weeks of December, odds favor you have completed your holiday shopping. So you're not going to be gifting games that release in December. Though Nintendo will kind of disprove this because that's one of their strongest months when it comes to software and hardware sales. But Nintendo is the exception to the rule. So Fable needs December to itself, so it can just do its own little thing. Maybe it can make the end of November, but I think Fable definitely makes this year. I don't think anything that Microsoft has publicly dated for 2025 has slipped out of the year. I think everything that they have publicly dated will release this calendar year as planned.
And if they do that, I mean, what is that? 8 games? 9 games?
Let's go. We'll start from the beginning of the year. We have Avowed, South of Midnight,
2,
Doom,
3,
Oblivion,
4,
The Outer Worlds,
5,
Towerborn,
6,
Call of Duty,
7,
Gears EDay,
8,
Fable,
9.
And then if we want to entertain the Gears of War collection,
I mean, it's a release, is not?
As long as it exists.
So that's 10. So you telling me they're releasing 10 games this year? There's 12 months of the year.
We haven't even brought up Forza Horizon 6, which I don't think releases in 2025.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, like, save it for next year. Some people are, do you remember? I bet you people will write articles like Xbox has too many games.
Yep.
Why this is bad, or kind of similar to 2015 when there were articles like PlayStation has no games and why that's genius. Somebody will make a negative thing like Xbox is releasing too many games or something. And I'm sure there are plenty of people listening to this show that are probably like, there's no way they're releasing 10 games or 7 games or 6. Who releases those many games in a year? Nobody. And I mean, if you want to use Grand Theft Auto 6 as the monster and the excuse why Microsoft won't release this many games, it's definitely a valid opinion to hold. And I want to complicate matters even further now. Oh, God, here we go. What?
Starfield and Indiana Jones both have DLC coming out.
Yeah, that is true.
So
Starborn for Starfield, which presumably would be the 2nd year anniversary. And I don't know when the Indiana Jones one would be, but I don't know if it would launch with the PS5 version.
So you think it would be that early?
I don't know. I'm just, probably not.
But like, look how full this year becomes when we begin to include like DLC. And naturally, Flight Simulator will continue to get updates as well.
Yeah, and Sea of Thieves and Halo and Diablo 4, and everything. Yeah.
Grounded, all those titles will continue to get updates. So Microsoft may finally be hitting that stride, as you mentioned earlier, where Matt Booty would say, we want a significant release every quarter. this may be the year they're finally able to realize that promise.
About time.
But you see, like as we started the show saying, this could be that year that people have been waiting for Xbox finally to deliver on. And it's really not that far-fetched. Nothing that we've said is out of the realm of possibility. The only things that haven't been confirmed for 2025 is Gears EDay, which really transforms the year from amazing to legendary.
Yeah, and then plus the unannounced Gears collection in Oblivion, which is kind of just like a cherry on the top, right?
Oblivion, I think, is going to be an interesting release to kind of gauge. I'm really curious to see how much enthusiasm is going to be around that, because I wasn't that big of a fan of Oblivion on 360.
That was my first Elder Scrolls game.
It was mine as well. I didn't play Morrowind on the original Xbox because it looked just strange to me. But when Oblivion came to the 360, I was like, okay, this is this huge HD RPG. And I played it for a few hours. And I'm like, this just isn't clicking with me. I don't understand why people hype this so much. I still own the collector's edition. Came with a whole map and a coin and everything. And I've tried to go back to that game over the years, and it just does not click. Maybe now with some lush, beautiful visuals, maybe it'll be enough to keep me enthralled for a little longer. But I'll be curious to how people react to this game. Even to see how well it reviews, because with such a limited marketing cycle of, let's say, March to June, it kind of feels as though Microsoft and even Bethesda aren't viewing it as a major release. It's just kind of the next Elder Scrolls game isn't coming out for several more years. We have to keep fans kind of happy and satisfied with something that isn't called Skyrim. So let's remaster an older one kind of near its 20th anniversary and let fans play that in the meantime. It just feels as though it's a filler release. And I know that's kind of harsh and it's belittling of the game. And I don't mean to do that, but it doesn't feel as though it's going to be treated as a significant release.
Well, I mean, most likely it is just going to be a graphical update, right? It's not like it's not like it's a remake like Silent Hill 2 or something along those lines where they completely redo everything. So, I mean, it's just one of those things when you have all these other games, newer games, like where's the focus should be is on that stuff where it's like, hey, we have an Oblivion remaster, you can play it, and people probably naturally gravitate towards it anyways because it's Elder Scrolls with a UE5 coat of paint on it, so it probably is going to look good,
right? But
it's still Oblivion, the game that you played 20 years ago, right?
And I guess a lot of people maybe have never played Oblivion because, as you mentioned, it is 20 years old or will be close to 20 years old. So a lot of people's first introduction to Elder Scrolls was likely Skyrim. And now you're kind of curious about, what were some of these older games like? And yeah, Oblivion is on Game Pass. It is slightly enhanced if you play it on a Series X. But yeah, having Unreal Engine 5 visuals are definitely a lot more pleasing than up-res early 360 graphics.
Yeah, I mean, plus, I mean, you would say there at least be some marketing for it, the way you describe of like, hey, we're going to announce it in March, and then you can play it in June instead of just being during the showcase. Here's a trailer for Oblivion, play it today, right?
Yeah,
where you don't get any of that. So there's at least some goodwill, some generation of like, oh, Oblivion's coming. Oh, cool. I can't wait to check that out again, you know?
Yeah, have something like that nostalgia factor and get people excited for the game. So June for that be very interesting. And I mean, 2025 for Xbox in terms of first party releases on the Series X can be legendary if they really deliver on this. And I really don't see any reason they can't deliver on what we just laid out here as a roadmap. I think they could hit every single stop. And we go into next year, ideally Forza Horizon 6 shows up in 2026, Perfect Dark.
Yeah, Clockwork Revolution, Everwild, finally. State of Decay 3.
Microsoft finally is delivering on everything that they showed us years ago. And naturally, when you show us games 2 or 3 years ago, these games have to come to market at some point. So if you really look at Microsoft starting in December of 2024 with Indiana Jones, and then you look forward throughout 2025, that's a fantastic 13 months of releases potentially. And if you're a Game Pass subscriber, you're more than justifying your subscription.
Yeah, but you know what people are going to ask you? Where's Contraband?
Contraband has been taken over by custom agents because
who knows where Contraband is?
I wish I knew where it was. I think it's being held in a cell somewhere, an evidence locker.
Well, will it ever come out? Maybe.
If Everwild can come out, anything can come out.
That is true. I wonder what Everwild's going to look like when it does come out, though, because there's rumors that it's like a Pokemon-esque Viva Pinata game. It kind of.
I like what you said at the second half of that. I was a big fan of Viva Pinata.
Yeah, people love Viva Pinata. So, I mean, I personally don't like Pokemon. So, and Rare did put out their Christmas card with a screenshot of Everwild. So, I would say there's probably a good chance we see it again at some point this year. Not saying it's going to come out this year, but I could see it being at the showcase again finally. Being like, Rare's here with Everwild, you know? Finally, after 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be an interesting game to finally get a good look at because no one knows what to expect from it.
Yep.
Everyone's just like, yeah, you announced a game, it went missing, and now we're just kind of waiting for it to reappear. And depending on the format in which it reappears is going to kind of set up how people are going to react to it. If it's a very confusing, weird looking game, people are going to say we waited 4 or 5 years for that. And if it looks as though it might be intriguing, like a Viva Pinata, people might say, ooh, okay, I see what you've been cooking. You have my intrigue. Now show us it a little more in depth in the future, and you may have my purchase. So Rare definitely has a monumental task ahead of them.
Yeah. So what's next on the list? We can talk about. I guess I'll ask you about. Does Microsoft have a presence during any of these Switch 2 reveals?
So, yeah, we'll go into some of the multi-platform plans for Microsoft in 2025.
Are you going to burn down the internet like you did last year around this time of year?
Hey, I didn't know that was going to happen. I just innocently went on the podcast last year, shared Microsoft was bringing one of their games to a competitor's platform, and then suddenly, like an eruption from hell, the whole gaming landscape changed.
Sure did.
Microsoft is hosting emergency podcast, and I'm getting daily, if not hourly, tweets telling me I single-handedly destroyed Xbox and I hate Xbox and I'm a double agent working for Sony or something. It was a wild 4 weeks, I'll say that. And it felt as though it went on for an eternity. So 2025, as Microsoft's multi-platform plans have become more concrete, and I think more and more people are beginning to accept the reality that Microsoft is basically the world's largest third-party publisher. Yeah, they're going to have more games go multi-platform in 2025.
Shocker. Didn't see that coming.
Outside of the ones we already know about, like Doom, Dark Ages, The Outer Worlds 2, I suspect Oblivion is a multi-platform game. There's just no reason to doubt that. So games that I have heard will be released multi-platform in 2025 beyond the obvious include Flight Simulator will come to PlayStation 5 and Switch 2.
Mm-hmm.
And Halo, the Master Chief Collection will be coming to PS5 and Switch 2 as well.
Now you know why Phil Spencer said there's no red lines.
Yeah, I mean, I would also go as far to say that if a Gears of War collection exists and releases in 2025, I would say that would likely be a day one release on PlayStation 5 as well.
Yep.
Microsoft is just going to fully embrace that. Any game coming out this year will at some point find its way to PS5 and or Switch 2. It's just going to be a question of when. It could be 6 months later, it could be 12 months later, but I think at some point, anything coming out this year will find its way to other systems. Microsoft is going to be a very big supporter of the Switch 2 when it does come out. They will be porting and patching the current Switch lineup. So games like Grounded and Pentiment, the Ori games will eventually find their way to Switch 2, be patched with 4K support. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see Sea of Thieves, maybe Hi-Fi Rush also find their way over. Just expect a lot of Microsoft games on Switch 2 and PS5 moving forward. But Flight Simulator and Halo Master Chief Collection are two games I have heard about that should be making their way over in 2025.
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of angry people about Halo. A lot of the people do call Halo like the soul of Xbox, and that those games should never cross over. But this is a different Microsoft at this point in time. I sort of wonder. In my mind, I envision the announcement of Halo Master Chief Collection as part of one of these Switch 2 game reveals. When they do third-party stuff, and you you just start hearing the Halo music.
Yeah.
And it's just like Halo 1, Halo 2, Halo 3, Halo 4, ODST, Reach. You're talking,
an amazing collection of games, very iconic games that really defined what the Xbox was in its early days. And I agree. I think a title like Halo Master Chief Collection, when it is announced as a multi-platform release, will be at a Nintendo hosted event, because look back to last year, outside of the emergency podcast, where were the first multi-platform games from Microsoft announced? They were at the Nintendo Direct when Pentiment and Grounded were announced for Nintendo Switch release. Then you saw Hi-Fi Rush, Sea of Thieves, and such come to PlayStation 5 in the following months. So it was clear that the original plan was always, we're going to announce our multi-platform ambitions via the Nintendo Direct. So I think a game like Halo Master Chief Collection going multi-platform, it would be at a Nintendo event, because Nintendo and Microsoft have been very friendly, be it Banjo appearing in Smash Brothers or some of the rare N64 games appearing on NSO. These are two companies who want to cooperate with each other, and they basically use each other to benefit the other. So Halo and a Nintendo Direct, I think that would definitely be in the cards.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't imagine. I already see the reactions of people watching the Direct and then seeing Halo, and people going crazy in the internet, and because it's Halo. You never thought you would see it on a competing platform, but there's always been rumors that they were planning on putting it in different places, but they never actually materialized.
Yeah, that goes all the way back to the DS, where there is a playable build of Halo on DS.
Yeah.
And it just never came to market. There was also a Halo Mega Bloks game at one point.
Yeah.
And, finally bringing Halo to competitors' platforms should become a reality in 2025. And I can only imagine what the reaction is going to be from me sharing this information. It shouldn't ignite the world like last year, but it should. I imagine it's going to invoke some emotions, mostly from Xbox fans who just don't want to accept that Microsoft is evolving. They're making the Xbox brand into a bigger brand. They want you to experience Xbox outside of just their box, whether that's on PlayStation 5, Switch 2, your LG TV, your PC. It doesn't matter the platform. Xbox is growing, it's evolving. And I think that's going to take me to the next point I want to touch on. Will we see Microsoft announce new hardware in 2025?
Well, interesting topic. New hardware. Because we just saw Jason Ronald at the Lenovo Go. He kind of talked about Xbox's ambitions in the handheld gaming space, talking about how they want to combine the best of Xbox and Windows into handheld. And we know, Phil's basically confirmed they're making an Xbox handheld, but he did say it was a few years away. And there are rumors about Xbox Prime. I don't know about whether or not you believe those. That's supposed to be coming in 2026. Rumors about third-party hardware that companies might be making. So I could easily see them announcing some form of hardware, whether it's their own whether it's showcasing their Xbox UI on these gaming handhelds or this third-party stuff. And I mean, maybe directly announcing the Xbox handheld is probably too early, but if the next Xbox is next year like it's claimed, then I don't see why you wouldn't show it this year at some point.
Yeah, I don't believe the Xbox Prime 2026 rumors. It feels too soon.
I mean, 6 years generation is sort of normal, kind of in a way, right?
It used to be the norm. I mean, when you look back at the original Xbox, it was only 4 years before they replaced it with the 360. And I mean, that cost them a lot of money to kind of just cut it short. I think they're still going to follow that. We saw the leaked roadmap, which everything has actually been later than the roadmap suggests.
Or outright canceled. I mean, right. The Sebel controller exists, but it was supposed to be out by now, and it's not. We just saw the patents for it. And the Brooklyn and the other Series S thing were canceled because even though we did get new hardware, they didn't have the upgrades that Brooklyn was supposed to have.
Right.
So some of the changes to the timeline are screwed up or just outright not true anymore.
Yeah, and the timeline had the next-gen hardware. I think it was like 2027 to 2028.
It was 2028.
Yeah, I see no reason. At best, maybe 2027 if they wanted to accelerate things to be sooner. But I don't think 2026 is like in the cards for them to do new hardware. But as you mentioned with the handhelds or the third-party devices, the OEM devices, I could see Microsoft announce their next-gen ambitions this year.
What do you mean by next-gen ambitions?
The direction that they are going to take the Xbox brand. So okay. If that's with the third-party portable PCs where Xbox OS is the main thing, and they say moving forward, our ambitions with the Xbox brand is to have Xbox OS on numerous other devices where you can take your Xbox library to these devices, like that type of ambition. I think we could see them maybe lay out some of those terms this year. But as far as new hardware goes, I don't think we will see anything. And definitely not have a release date or anything of that sort. But I think they will begin to communicate a little more than they have already. Because last year they did put out there saying, we're committed to a next-gen system. You had Sarah Bond put out a tease about hardware that amounted to nothing. Some people think that was about the Galaxy system, but I don't see why she would tease it in such a way of such a nothing release that they did very minimal marketing around when the system finally did drop. So it seems as though maybe they were building towards something that they wanted to detail towards the end of 2024 that they had to pivot on. So maybe whatever they were planning to discuss in 2024 will now find its way in 2025 for them to kind of outline and just give a general description of their ambitions moving forward for the Xbox brand as they continue to pivot. Their multi-platform plans have accelerated considerably. And we didn't touch on this game, but it's been one of the rumored multi-platform games for a long time and just doesn't go away. Forza Horizon 5.
Yeah, been a lot of rumors about that game.
Do you think it finally does release on another system in 2025, or do you think the rumors are just going to kind of peter out and nothing will come?
I don't know. I mean, when you talk about games that would do well on other platforms, like Sea of Thieves always came to mind, and Forza Horizon 5, like there's really... It's in a league of its own. There's really not a lot of games like it. I mean, there are a lot of imitators like the Crew Motorfest and stuff or Test Drive Unlimited. But there's really nothing else like Forza Horizon. And, you know, if Microsoft is all about earning that cash and making as much money as possible, then releasing Forza Horizon 5 on Switch and PlayStation 5 is a no-brainer. It'd probably do incredibly well on both platforms. Kind of like alongside Halo Master Chief Collection, I always sort of expected, or at least in my mind when I think about these things of what are the games coming to Switch 2, you'd have like a Halo Master Chief Collection announcement, and why not a Forza Horizon 5 announcement? Then at the same time you could announce it for PlayStation and you could go on to sell a lot of copies. The only reason I guess you could say is if they don't do it, is if they change plans with Forza Horizon 6. And if like originally it was supposed to be Forza Horizon 5 coming to these other platforms, but we were going to launch Forza Horizon 6 as, I don't know, a 6-month or 12-month exclusive or whatever. Maybe they changed it and it's like, well, now Forza Horizon 6 is day one. And then maybe you don't need Forza Horizon 5. You just don't, because these games, they have like time limits, right? Forza Horizon 4 just got delisted. So there's only one Forza Horizon game that you can actually play. And I would imagine that maybe that's already coming up on its deletion date or delisting date. So maybe they're like, you know what? It's just too late. We can't release the game because if we do, it's got to be delisted anyways. So maybe they just wait for Forza Horizon 6. I don't know. What do you think?
It's really complicated because a lot of the rumors around Forza Horizon 5 coming to PlayStation 5 had begun in April or May of 2024. And at the time, a lot of the suggestion around it was that the game would release on PlayStation 5 around holiday of 2024. Now, that obviously came and went with nothing. So we're at a point of if Forza Horizon 5 is to come to PS5 and let's say Switch 2, you are approaching that deadline. And if Forza Horizon 6 is 2026, you do have to consider, is it worth releasing? As you mentioned, if you're only going to get a 12-month window to be able to sell this game and engage with its players, is it worth it? Or you're better off doing a day one release of Forza Horizon 6 on PS5 and any other platform that, is capable of handling it. I would probably go in favor of just making Forza Horizon 6 a day one multi-platform release versus taking all the time and effort of porting Forza Horizon 5 over only to have it out there for 12 months and then becoming obsolete. So in a way, it feels as though the window has closed on Forza Horizon 5 going multi-platform. But at the same time, depending on how far they got with the port, how much work was done, what type of expense was committed to it, maybe the port is still worth putting out there. It wouldn't shock me if we did see Forza Horizon 5 appear as a PlayStation 5 game in 2025. But on the same token, I would also not be surprised if the game just doesn't surface. Like, I don't believe the rumors were just baseless speculation and talks in the clouds. I believe these were factual plans. These were considerations. There was work being done on this port. And sometimes things just don't come to fruition. And I think in the case of Forza Horizon 5, if it doesn't release, it's just a case of plans shifted. And the focus became Forza Horizon 6 instead. And it could have been due to accelerating plans of their multi-platform ambition, where at some point it was, let's take older games and port those over. And that was in that window of when they had a red line that they weren't going to cross. And then they got rid of the line and said, okay, forget it. Let's make Forza Horizon 6 a day one multi-platform release when it releases in 2026. So that shifted the plans and changed with Forza Horizon 5. That easily could have happened. So it's really hard to say what took place with Forza Horizon 5, but the rumors did go around for a long time. There was rumors leading into Gamescom that was going to be the title that Microsoft announced as their PS5 game. And in turn, it was Indiana Jones.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of discussion around the game. I couldn't say where we're going to end up landing on it. But I'll definitely, if it came to PS5 or Switch 2, I would definitely be interested in checking the game out. It's a fantastic game. And
yeah, it's a great game.
Yeah, with their seemingly Forza Horizon 5 not on the radar for 2025, or Forza Horizon 6 not on the radar for 2025, I think it would still be a very lucrative release for them because there's nothing like that on PlayStation. So get the game out there, sell a few million copies.
Yeah, although I do wonder if Xbox is like, well, we want to put it on the Switch too, but also Mario Kart 9 might be a launch game. And Mario Kart 8 sold 60 million copies. So that might...
You don't want to compete with that.
I mean, who wants to compete with Mario Kart?
That's true. Sony tried once with Mod Nation Racers.
Yeah, and then they tried competing with Smash Brothers with PlayStation All Stars and saw how that went.
Neither of those IPs are relevant anymore. I don't even think they got bot representation in Astrobot.
Yeah, I don't think they did either.
So that shows how important they are to Sony now. They attempted to compete and just got steamrolled. But I think Microsoft could have a very interesting year in 2025. I think we laid out a nice roadmap of legendary proportion that I'm sure a lot of people are going to disagree with. And they're going to say there's no way Microsoft is going to have a year that good. That's just not possible. Microsoft has yet to do it this generation.
Yep.
And to that point, I say that's exactly why they should have a year that good, because we've waited the whole generation for them to finally arrive at this level of output.
It'd be pretty spectacular if they were able to deliver on all those games, even if one of them was delayed, right? You're still talking about, 8 games or 6 games or whatever it would be. You're still talking about probably the best year in Xbox history.
Yeah, you're basically looking at a game every month.
Some people won't like it because some will be multi-platform, but that's just kind of the future that Xbox has put themselves in. And, we may disagree with it or agree with it. Nothing we say is going to change their minds.
Right. I mean, the way I view multi-platform releases is basically whether the game goes multi-platform or not, it doesn't change my enjoyment of the game. It doesn't change how I consume the game. I don't like Indiana Jones going to PlayStation 5 in April doesn't make it any less of a game in my eyes because I played it in December. I'm looking forward to more people playing Indiana Jones because it's a fantastic game and more people should play it. The game should have huge sales. It's one of the best games to come out this generation. So I want more people to play it. I want the hardworking team at Machine Games to get the recognition they deserve. So when Halo Master Chief Collection comes to PlayStation 5 and Switch 2, I want more people to play those games because Halo Combat Evolved remains one of the best first-person shooters ever to release in gaming. It's a masterpiece. And a lot more people can play online, ideally.
Yeah.
But with that, I go to our Streamlabs questions, which will be followed by our YouTube member questions. And our first Streamlabs question comes from Sketchdog, whom this episode is dedicated to, as they donated $100, and they write, "Happy holidays. Which one of these 3 games do you think is most likely to be remade? 1, Chrono Trigger. 2, Romancing Saga 3. Number 3, Final Fantasy 8.
I mean, remade as in like a remake? Out of those choices, I think it would have to be Chrono Trigger.
I agree with you, actually.
I don't really see them interested in doing Final Fantasy VIII Remake. Even though, isn't that like one of the best-selling Final Fantasies?
It did sell quite well, but they did do the remaster of it not too long ago, where they improved the visuals considerably. We're still waiting for Final Fantasy IX Remake to come out and be officially announced. The game still exists, everybody, along with Final Fantasy Tactics. Both those games still exist. They just won't be out in 2025. But Chrono Trigger, I mean, it's such a renowned game for everything that it did. I think you have to approach it with some caution as to how you want to remake it to make sure you ensure that legacy that it has built over the years. But I think that is the most likely of the 3.
Yeah.
Then had a $3 donation from Mr. L. With the Switch 2 looking like it's going to be utilizing DLSS, will this make the emulsion of Switch 2 significantly harder, especially if it uses some bespoke form of the technology? Happy New Year to you both. I'm going to assume you meant emulation of Switch 2. Honestly, that question is beyond my knowledge set. I don't know how that would affect that. I would imagine there still would be ways to emulate the games. It may be a little more difficult, but it's not as though DLSS is just improving the picture quality, so the image fidelity. So if you were emulating it, I guess you would just get it at a lower resolution, whatever the game was native coded at. But I don't think that's something we have to worry about in the immediate future, at least not for several more years. Then had a $2 donation from Jackie G. Since we are 5 years into the 2020s, what are some of your favorite games of the decade so far?
Oh, the decade, huh? So we're going back to 2020?
Yep, so pretty much the start of this generation.
I mean, my favorite, I'll give you my top three. Cyberpunk 2077, which I just played last year, which was incredible. Number 2 would be Elden Ring.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even a big fan of Dark Souls-like games. And number 3 would be Alan Wake 2.
Okay, that's a solid 3. I would go Elden Ring at number 1. Number 2, I think, oh man, this might be controversial. I'm going to say Returnal.
Oh, I mean, Returnal, you could make the... I think I've said it before, but I think Returnal is my favorite PlayStation exclusive this gen so far.
Yeah, I think it is mine. I love that game. And
The game was great.
Number 3, I think I'm going to go with Alan Wake 2. That game surprised me in every way. I loved it. But you see, if I had to go with number 4, I'd say Indiana Jones.
Yeah, Indiana Jones. Yeah. Do you think we'll get a Returnal 2, or do you think Housemarque is going to do something else?
I hope they do a Returnal 2 just to address some of the odd design choices they made with the first game, like not being able to suspend the game.
Yeah.
There's so many things they could do to just expand upon what they laid with that groundwork of the first game. So I hope we see a sequel, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do some new original idea as their next game, because we're definitely due for a new Housemarque game.
Yeah, this year would be 4 years, right?
Yeah, and we did get that like minor expansion to a Returnal a few years back with the Tower DLC, but we're due. I want to see what
it's
they're
like
up
more. Where's Blueprint's next game? They're more due than
technically
than Housemarque.
So I mean, Sony definitely has a few studios that we're waiting to see what they're up to. Even Sony Santa Monica with Corey's team. What's he doing?
Some sci-fi. That's PlayStation's new thing, the sci-fi stuff.
Everything is sci-fi. Sci-fi God of War.
I'll take it.
Now we have our YouTube member questions. Our first one comes from Victor. Hey, Nate, do you think Kojima's PTS game OD will be releasing this year on Xbox?
No, because I even think recently he said they had to stop working on the game because of the actor strikes or something.
Correct. Yep.
So yeah, I don't think it's coming this year.
Yeah, I would be surprised if we even see it this year as far as a meaningful trailer or an update. I think Kojima's focus in 2025 is going to be Death Stranding 2. And if you want to experience a Kojima game on Xbox in 2025, give Death Stranding a look. Or I guess you can indirectly play one of his masterpieces when Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta releases on the system in 2025. Then had a question from DC Fat Cat. How many first-party games will be released in 2025? Since this question was posed to a post I made for members only about an Xbox episode being recorded, I'm going to assume you mean for Xbox games. And in our predictions, what did we have? 10, I think we counted.
I think, yeah, when you include Oblivion and Gears collection, comes down to like 10 games.
And then we have DLC for some games, and that's not including any late ports or multi-platform releases that they will have in 2025. So we're looking at a minimum of 10, possibly, or a minimum of 8, possibly up to 10.
Which is crazy to think about.
It really is. Then had a question from GamerCom64. Hey, Nate and MVG. One of my friends is wondering when the next Xbox Game Showcase is happening. Have you guys heard of when the next Xbox Game Showcase is happening? January 23rd.
Yeah, January 23rd. And then you'll have your regular Xbox Showcase in June, like whatever that Sunday would be, right? June 12th or 13th or whatever.
Yeah. Then we had Epsilon Nate. Hello. I would like to pitch a conspiracy theory to pitch you. Since Microsoft doesn't know what to do with Banjo-Kazooie, do you think they will sell that IP to Nintendo? Also, what Microsoft games do you think will be going to Nintendo Switch 2? Well, we touched on the last question in the episode, titles like Flight Simulator and Halo Master Chief Collection, alongside titles like Sea of Thieves and everything else that was released on the Switch. Pentiment, Grounded will be getting patched and 4K support when it comes to Switch 2. As for Microsoft selling the Banjo-Kazooie IP to Nintendo, I would actually be in support of that. If Microsoft isn't going to use it, let Nintendo use it and find a developer who can make a Banjo-Kazooie game. Or maybe, and here's even a more wild conspiracy, Microsoft license Banjo-Kazooie to Nintendo. Nintendo finds a developer, and Nintendo publishes it on both Switch 2 and Xbox platforms.
That'd be crazy. Too good to be true.
Then I had a question from RGP Estelario. Hi guys, do you think Microsoft will end up putting their main IPs like Halo, Gears of War, Fable, and Perfect Dark to PS5 and Nintendo Switch 2? Yes.
Yeah. The only question is it day one or timed?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yes.
Yes. Just a question of day one, or it'll be 6 months, 12 months later. Then I had a question from Zombie. Hi, Nate and MVG. With all the rumors of the new Xbox controller being worked on, do you think there is any chance it will be revealed in 2025? Or will any new controller wait until new hardware is announced? I think it will wait until new hardware is announced.
I think that seems like a good thought right there. Like the new controller probably will launch with new hardware.
And then our final question comes from Dynamouse. Hey guys, have you heard anything further on a potential Banjo title being developed?
Oh man, people love Banjo.
It seems weird that Phil Spencer directly mentioned Banjo a while back if there were no intentions behind it. I haven't heard anything since we originally spoke on it a couple of years ago. We spoke on it too soon, as projects that are being pitched or early in development can always be shelved and canceled. I don't know what's going on with Banjo anymore. You're right, Phil Spencer did acknowledge it and gave Banjo fans a lot of hope. So ideally, we do see something from Banjo happen in the next couple of years, but unfortunately, I don't have an update to share.
And the Banjo Bros want their game.
They do. You hear that, Phil Spencer?
Will they ever get one? Who knows?
One day we'll find out. That is our final question for this episode. If you'd like to support the channel, we have a Streamlabs link in the description below. Donate any dollar amount, ask a question. We will answer it at the end of the episode. Donate $100 or more, and we will dedicate the episode to you. Today's episode, once again, was dedicated to Sketchdog. And we also have YouTube memberships enabled. Join as a member. We have exclusive member-only comments and community questions, polls. We will have giveaways, live streams, and more, pending how many active members we gain. But with that, I'd like to thank Rand for joining me this episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun talking about these predictions, and we'll see how many we get right, and if people can make fun of you for saying it might be Xbox's best year ever. We'll see if you jinxed them.
I may have jinxed them, unfortunately. But let us know your thoughts in the comment section below on Xbox's 2025 and their multi-platform plans and more. And until next time, continue to embrace the hate.
With Nate and MVG, dissecting all the lies. Make the hate rocket hard, MVG dropping knowledge bombs. Us podcast sitting strong, guiding us where we belong. Through the pixels and the codes, breaking down what future holds. Nate and MVG showing us the gaming goal.